In this video, we're going to talk all about Slaves to Darkness and Bonesplitterz in 2nd edition.
Okay.
Welcome, Wargamers. My name is Doug with 2+ Stuff, and in a video I put out on Wednesday, I talked about how I put my Slaves to Darkness on the shelf for a little while, and then talked about some stories when I've traded armies. And one of the armies that I traded away was Bonesplitterz, because no one would play me. And because of this, I actually got a flood of comments on that video, and I got 14 emails to me, people asking really just fundamentally two questions. How come you don't play Slaves to Darkness? And two, why is it on your shelf? And two, what's wrong with Bonesplitterz? Before I dig into that, I just want to say thank you all so much to my patrons. Today is my first official day working for you guys, making content. I have a whole bunch of stuff planned. I'm really cranking it out today. This week of videos has been kind of stream of conscious, ad-lib, because I've been working extra hard at work to make the transition really easy for my boss. Again, thank you for bearing with me, hanging in there. And next week, we're going to kick it off with Gorka Morka and diving into some destruction lore. So starting off with the first topic, how come I shelved my Slaves to Darkness? Well, here's the thing. First of all, make this very clear. I'm just waiting for an undivided battle tome. Chaos Undivided, where they worship the gods, chaos gods, Khorne, Nurgle, Slaanesh, Tzeentch as a pantheon rather than individually. And this is 100% because of personal preference and then also some rules things. Here's what I mean. Personal preference being undivided chaos is really what draws me to chaos as a Grand Alliance. Because of that, I don't want to dedicate myself to Nurgle, Tzeentch, Khorne. All those factions have great books. I think Slaanesh has great game this edition with their addition of the depravity points. And I think there's some really cool things going on. Personally speaking, if I was going to pick any one of those, it'd probably be either Tzeentch or Khorne, because I think they have some major game. But really, I want to thematically play a Chaos Undivided. I like just the roving war bands in black, and they just kind of obey them all, really. The little bit of malign portent story that we got for the Dark Oath War Queen, where she was worshiping the gods as a pantheon and goes to various tribes, like she goes to a Khornate warband and like straight up kills their war leader and is like, you're all for me. And that kind of like a undivided hero that brings warbands of various allegiances underneath them is kind of the coolest thing in the world to me, and I want to represent that on the tabletop. Now, I've already recorded this video once, but I felt like I was whining for too long and complaining. I went into too much detail, so we're going to head over to the Games Workshop site, and I'm going to make this very brief. Really, fundamentally, the Slaves to Darkness, as we know them now as a sub-faction, suffer from just a few things. One is they have very few synergies without going into allies. In addition to that, they have almost universally no rend, no multi-damage weapons, and in terms of, again, mortal wounds, multi-damage weapons, rend, these are all very important things to make a faction happen. What they do have in a plethora of is bodies. They have just all the infantry you would ever want for a chaos army, as well as some cool ways to do rerolls. The problem is that they have a billion ways to do rerolls. Reroll ones of everything, reroll complete, failed whatevers, and that means hit rolls, wound rolls, save rolls, battle shock. They can do it all. But the thing is that their basic stat line is not so extravagant, so that rerolls are kind of like glorious. They're kind of just average, and that kind of hurts the faction. Now, in addition to that, they also have very few command abilities that come up very often. And by that I mean the Chaos Lord of Manticore, his command ability only helps a single unit of Chaos Warriors, who are, admittedly, super cool infantry, but they're basically liberators. And so they don't have those smaller heroes with a lot of minor buffs, like the Knight Heraldor, or, just like random heroes that just kind of make things better, Lord Castellan. So that kind of synergy level is sorely lacking. In addition to that, even their command abilities are a bit redundant. For example, the Lord of Demonic Mount and the Dark Oath War Queen both give reroll charge rolls, and so does the Lord of Manticore. He only gives it to Chaos Warriors, he only gives it to Knights or the Chariots, she gives it to everyone, but they have to be wholly within 10. Chaos Lord takes a mark and gets a bonus for it. Again, reroll hit rolls of 1 if it's a Khorne, wound rolls of 1 if it's Nurgle, save rolls if it's Tzeentch, and basically his command ability, he passes that on to somebody else. Which sounds cool until you look down at the Chaos Sorcerer Lord, whose spell is a casting value of 5, so very easy to get off, and gives reroll hit rolls of 1 for any unit. You pick one unit and they get all of them, which is reroll hit rolls of 1, wound rolls of 1, and save rolls of 1. So again, a lot of ways to get the exact same effect, and it's an arguably not great effect. I can tell you that, for example, I like to run my Chaos Warriors. All mine are built with double hand weapons. That means I naturally reroll hit rolls of 1. That means any Khorne bonuses in this entire faction are worthless to me because I already do that. And just give you an kind of example of what I'm talking about. Again, so every unit that has those kinds of, like, if you take double weapons, you get blank. You already have that in spades. And so that kind of becomes the issue. Again, their attacks are not great. The only real ranged unit you have is Marauder Horsemen with their javelins, which, I will be honest with you, are super legit. I actually deleted a unit of Demonettes with them, and they're pretty fun. But again, not a lot of different kinds of synergies. In terms of Rend, you have your Chosen, who are these 2 units right here. I'm not sure why they have 2 different kinds, but there's Chosen. And you can also buy these very expensive, great weapons for your Chaos Warriors, which give them Rend 1, which is not bad. The thing is that we are seeing more armies that can ignore Rend 1, like Seraphon, and I think Skeleton Warriors can do that as well. And while there are battalions, there are 3 battalions. One of them was pointed out by Vince Ventrella from Warhammer Weekly as being one exceptionally cool. Basically, you take a bunch of these units and you pile them into the enemy, and anytime one of your units is near an enemy hero, they get to attack again. It's just 1 unit per turn, but it's an extra attack, round of attacks. The thing is, some key units are not included in those battalion options, like Marauders or Marauder Horsemen, and so you have to build out with the bigger, heavier units to make those things work. So we're going to scroll up to the top here. I'm sorry if I'm getting everyone dizzy. And their big synergy piece is the War Shrine, who, let's bring up their page here. Their big thing is when you put the War Shrine down, you pick a mark for the unit, for the shrine itself, and they can give out a various blessing to any unit nearby. And the thing is, and it's the same stuff that we've been talking about. Tzeentch, reroll save rolls of 1. There is a bonus if they do that same prayer and blessing onto a unit that has the same mark as them. So if they do it to a Tzeentch unit, they get to reroll all failed save rolls, which, being this is one of the bigger synergy pieces in the army, makes you say, well, okay, so why don't I just mark all my Slaves to Darkness with the same mark, so I can get this synergy off and have really, really good rerolls versus just reroll 1s. And at a certain point, it's like, well, why not just play Tzeentch, right, and ally this guy in? This is that kind of stuff where it's like, there's no inherent reason to ever, like, mix your forces up, because the synergies aren't there. The meager ones you need, generally speaking, you want them to be the same mark, and it's just a little bit rough. Now, what I will say is that the whole not wanting to play allies thing is 100% me, and I fully understand that. It's just something about me. I like to stay in faction. For example, I know that, like, there's tons of examples of this, but Fire Slayers and Carriage Overlords, a lot of those players don't want to take a wizard. It just is what it is. And so, yeah, I'm one of those folks. I like to stay in faction. But the thing is that those external synergy devices are what you need to make Slaves to Darkness work. You need a Blood Secretor if you're going to play a more Khorne-themed warband, because you really want that +1 attack. Or you need, what's the Nurgle guy that gives you like a 5-up feel no pain? You want those pieces to bring this faction to life, and I simply just am not interested in that. So until I get a Dark Oath book or whatever, some kind of Chaos Undivided thing that kind of brings their synergies together, I'm just going to hold off a little bit. But I'm going to hold on to them because I do love this army so very, very much. One thing I do want to also add is the fact that this is all just models and units. Their allegiance ability that they get in the General's Handbook is the exact same thing. Pick a unit, pick a hero, and give them a mark, and they give a buff to all units with the same mark near them, and it's just the rerolls of 1. Again, same things over and over again. But I don't really like being negative, and so what I'm going to do is transfer over and talk about Bonesplitterz. With Bonesplitterz, I mentioned the fact that nobody wanted to play me, and therefore I got despondent and traded off the army. People were asking, what's so bad about Bonesplitterz? Well, you have to like travel in your Wayback Machine, hop in your DeLorean, and go to the time where Bonesplitterz came out, because this is one of the first times where a battalion came out and just totally threw the game for a loop. I'm talking about the Cunning Ruck. It is a battalion that takes some of their basic units, the Savage Boys and then the Arrow Boys, and just kind of a boss, just kind of a low-grade melee hero. And the idea is that once a turn, so in your hero phase, the boss can pick a unit that's in 10 inches of them, and they get to another activation. They can move, they can charge, they can pile in an attack if they're already within 3 inches. I don't know that they can charge, actually. Let me back that up. They can pile in an attack if they're in 3 inches, or they can shoot. And so what this means is, people, if you don't know, Arrow Boys are kind of dependent how many shots they have based on how many models are in the unit. You can, theoretically, between the hero phase shooting and the actual shooting phase shooting, launch 240 arrows at your enemy. Now this takes an immense amount of time, because not only are you shooting all those arrows, but there are reroll mechanics to be able to get like rerolls of 1, those kinds of stuff. It is incredibly time consuming to do, as well as the fact that like it's just a negative play experience for some people, because once your enemy gets in 18 inches, they're just poof, they just disappear. So what happened was, when that book came out, I got really excited about Bonesplitterz. Like, yeah, the tribal aspect, I love it. Jumped right into it hard, painted up 2,000 points of it, and then people hearing the things that were going online didn't want to play me because they didn't want to have a bad play experience, and they weren't even willing to give me a try. And that's kind of the issue. The thing is that I never played the Cunning Ruck like that. I didn't abuse that mechanic. What I would do is take a unit of Arrow Boys and then a bunch of melee troops, because one of those things is you can pile in attack, and there are some great synergies for attacking in melee more, which I think is far more engaging with your opponent rather than just deleting them with 1,000 shots. And so we're actually going to talk about that a little bit here. Going over to the Bonesplitterz range. So to make it very clear, before I go any further, nothing is wrong with Bonesplitterz. The game has evolved to the point where the Cunning Ruck, I don't think, is nearly as scary as it was. Most people don't want to play it because it takes so long to do those shooting phases and things like that. So we're here now. Still got a pretty battle tome. Again, this whole faction really comes off of like 4 kits. The Boars are 1 kit, and so are, I believe, all 3 of these options. Yep, they're all 1 kit. And then you have your list of heroes that are all Savage. So we're going to crack into a few of these here. The first we need to talk about is the Wargog Prophet, which is this guy right here, who's actually one of my favorite models. I love him. And really what we're looking for specifically here is the fact that his command ability lets a unit within 15 inches immediately pile in and attack as if it were the combat phase. This can stack with the melee ability that you get from the Cunning Ruck. To save yourself some time, I'd probably just do them at the exact same time. By that I mean, like, your basic boy gets 1 attack. I'd probably just do his 1 basic attack, the Cunning Ruck 1, and then this guy just roll 3 dice for each and just get it done. Saves you a little bit of time there. The Arrow Boys that we were talking about earlier, again, really, really nasty stuff. They make 1 extra attack with their stinging bows if their unit has 20 or more models, so that brings them to 3 shots each. You can take them, I believe, in bulk of 30, if I'm not mistaken, so that'd be 90 shots. So, I mean, it's nasty. Savage Orcs, which is your basic boy. Ignore the big stabber thing, that's something else. But they're, to kind of temper that, you can reroll wound rolls of 1 for Savage Orcs if they have at least 20 models, and you can reroll all failed wound rolls if they have at least 30. When you combine that reroll with the extra attack from the Wargog Prophet and the extra attack from the Battalion, I personally thought that going melee was probably the stronger option, especially because at 2 wounds and a 6-up save that will never go away, you cannot you cannot ignore the 6-up save, even with Ren and stuff like that. If you're playing pure Bonesplitterz, I think they get into combat. I never had a problem getting them into combat. How about that? And there's some cool stuff going on there. Then you go over to the Maniac, who has this cool thing here. He has a unique spell. If successfully cast, you can reroll hit rolls of 1 for the caster and any friendly unit of Bonesplitterz that are within 10 inches when they attack until your next hero phase. So what you get is this really cool thing. What I'm really explaining here is my opinion on why, one, Bonesplitterz are still great, and two, why I think the shooting aspect of the Cunning Ruck kind of overshadowed the fact that they have a lot of game in this battalion in the melee phase. So you take your basic, what is that, hero. So this guy would be up to 3 attacks based on all the synergies that we have here, re-rolling at least hit rolls of 1, but then depending on how many miles they have in the unit, wound rolls of 1, or all failed wound rolls as well, which on a 3 to wound is pretty darn good. And then you can get some serious melee monsters. Now they don't have rend, that's kind of their thing, but orcs rarely do. They have a lot of attacks, not necessarily a lot of rend. And so between this, the spells that these things can bring, just so you know, the Weird Knob, the Wargog, and this little guy in here, the Wardock, all 3 of those are wizards. So if you take a good trifecta of them, you get a serious amount of spells between that and all stuff in the Battle Tome. Savage Big Boss is just your melee hero that triggers all of the battalion bonuses. There's just a lot of cool things happening in Bonesplitterz. And I think the problem was, fundamentally, game design wise, it's very poorly internally balanced. By this I mean the Cunning Ruck is the best. It is the absolute best. If you look at the other ones, they take some various units, but they don't really give them the same kind of bonuses. Being able to have a full activation in the hero phase trumps any other bonuses that the other battalions give you. And so that's what I mean, internally balanced. In and of itself, the Cunning Ruck is the way to build the army. But I think even within the Cunning Ruck, there's so much flexibility. You can go melee, you can go shooting. If you want to focus on the magics to really buff people up, you can really go that way. There's a lot of cool things you can do. Another thing I want to talk about here, and if you haven't seen the Rerolling Ones battle report where I played Mark's Bonesplitterz, Wargog Prophet is unique because he can do 2 spells. And this is super cool because we were playing in Gurian where you get a spell that allows you to teleport. And he used his first spell to teleport himself across the battlefield, and the second one to launch a Gravetide at me, which wound up killing my general during the game. It was absolutely devastating. But just kind of keep those things in mind. When you have 2 spells at your disposal, it's different, right? I mean, and this is one of the things I was talking to Jack about, is like having a wizard that can cast 2 spells is so infinitely better than someone who can cast just 1. And it's just, I think it's better than having 2 separate wizards. I don't know, because it's usually cheaper. But yeah, I don't know. So people were asking about what's wrong with Bonesplitterz. Nothing. The point that I was trying to make in my story was that when they came out, people skewed so hard into the shooting aspect of the Cunning Ruck that it created negative experiences for people online, and folks in my local area were just being butts and didn't want to give me a fair try at trying something different. And really that's what it came down to. It has nothing to do with the faction. I think the faction's in a pretty good place. Again, for having a limited model range of just like 5 kits, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kits, the amount of variety they've created is pretty darn fun, and their spell lore is pretty great. A lot of random casting values. These guys are kind of cool. They have a ritual, so you never know what bonus you're going to get, but they're all pretty cool. There's just a lot of fun things about Bonesplitterz, and so eventually I might ally some in to my Iron Jaws, but we'll see about that. So friends, that is my quick follow-up video for my discussion on Wednesday. I hope I answered some questions. I know that there are some synergies in Slaves to Darkness that I didn't touch on. Like, all of them focus on Slaanesh. If you take a Lord of Chaos mount with the Lord of Chaos to give Slaanesh units run and charge, and they can get +1 to hit rolls. I know there's things there, but what I'm simply saying is that none of them excite me. And so I'm going to put them on the shelf until I get a book that has a lot of stuff that makes it more exciting. That's really what it is. It's personal preference. And so at the end of the day, there's that. As far as Bonesplitterz go, nothing is wrong with Bonesplitterz. It was just people in my local area overreacting to online hype and not giving me a fair chance to have some fun. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have more questions about those things, or you think of some cool ideas for Bonesplitterz that I missed on, leave in the comments down below. I'd love to hear about it. Again, as I said, this is my last stream of conscious random video that I'm putting out. This week has been insane with trying to work to get myself in a good position to start working 4 days a week. And so I'm going to use the rest of today, Friday, to crank out some incredible content. We're going to be covering Gorka Morka. I have 3 videos on Iron Jaws, as well as a video on Gur. So it's Destruction Week on 2+ stuff, and I think it's going to be a great deal of fun. And I hope you join me for it. Thank you all so much for watching, and happy wargaming.